What's up everyone, Tom from the Airsoft headquarters here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a very brief overview of the Lancer Tactical rifles. Now we are going to be primarily focused on the Lancer Tactical Gen 3 systems that I have right here, because they're newer to the market and a lot of people still have questions about them and a lot of people want information. So I'm gonna, feed those baby birds with those information. But as part of this video, I also want to shed light to some of the Gen 2 rifles, and I have these two examples right here. Now in this overview video, I'm going to be looking at the externals, internals, accuracy, and some other points that I would like to make about the Gen 3 rifles specifically. And I have those timestamps down below. So if you guys just want to skip ahead, I got them in the description down below. Lancer Tactical has been a company since 2012, and they've been a distributor for a lot of different platforms of rifle systems, not just M4s, AKs, bolt action rifles, machine guns, even pistols more recently. Not only that, but they also are producing internal parts, external parts, magazines, BBs, lots of gear from the Lancer Tactical series, and they have their hands at a lot of different things. And with the rifle system specifically, they have different generations, which is the distinction between the Gen 1, the Gen 2s, the Gen 3s, because with every newer model, they're innovating and building on that previous model in order to give you a better performing, a more reliable system, as a company naturally does. Now, even though they've released some of the Gen 3 rifle systems, we still are going to be carrying the Gen 2 rifles, and we're still going to be suggesting the Gen 2s for a lot of beginner players, because these are spread out across a very wide spectrum of price points and come with a lot of different features. We feel like there's a very healthy option base to give to a beginner player. And that's kind of what these Lancer Tacticals are designed for. We would be providing the Lancer Tactical Gen 2 basic model or basic series, which is going to be an example of this guy. So this is just part of the Gen 2s. This is the polymer receiver. So that's this body right here. The external body is going to be a nylon polymer. The handguard system or rail system is going to be a polymer as well. Internally, they are going to be a little bit more basic, but in our experiences are still a very reliable and competitive internal base. Now, one of the examples that I don't have with me is going to be the Gen 2 hybrid, which is going to be a metal rail system, a polymer receiver or that polymer body with a Pro line internal gearbox, which means that they're going to have nicer parts and components internally paired with a MOSFET. So you could run higher voltage batteries inside of there and get good performance. There's also the Pro line series, which is going to be this as an example. So it has the all metal receiver, the metal rail system, and it's going to have that Pro line internals with that MOSFET system, those nicer internals, still giving you good performance. From Lancer Tactical, they also have their Overlords series, which is going to be a one-piece upper receiver, which means instead of there being a difference or distinction between the rail system and the upper receiver, it is all one piece. And there's also the Advanced Recons, which are OEM'd by Lonex, distributed by Lancer Tactical. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Advanced Recons, but based on that parts list, it seems like a really solid build overall. Just don't have my hands on them. Don't have any opinion one way or the other. So what we have currently on the market is going to be the Lancer Tactical Gen 3, and these is going to be the current iteration of the Lancer Tactical rifle systems, which has the nicest of external and internal builds. So we're going to be doing an overview of this just to lay the distinction or the difference between some of the Gen 2s and the Gen 3s. Now, the Gen 3s overall, as far as I know, unless they have one or two models hidden sneakily away, are all going to be a polymer rail system and a polymer receiver. Now, a lot of people don't like this for the idea of, well, it's technically a plastic. Well, in fact, most airsoft manufacturers are going to be utilizing a nylon reinforced polymer which is way different than your typical Chinesium plastic, right? This is not part of the Walmart or cheap Amazon Airsoft series. No, these are completely different from everything else that is cheap and plastic, right? These are super, super high strength. And what polymer is designed to do is it's designed to flex and bend with any type of stress in order to just bend with the force, right? Companies that understand that airsofters are going to be a little bit more harsh compared to other industries, realize that having a high strength polymer that's going to bend and flex with force, say someone's running along and they fall sideways down onto a tree stump, that rifle is going to bend and flex with the force and not snap. And it's going to just bounce back into place. And then, you stand up and you're self-squared away, dust whatever dirt off, throw your magazine back in, and then you're good to go. And that was an example of the polymer body. With metal bodies, they're a little bit tighter. They don't have nearly as much flex. So if they take the same amount of force, and certain companies understand that a high strength metal receiver means it's going to be high strength and it's not going to break on you, right? Case in point. Same thing with the Gen 3s here. They're designed to have some flexibility to them. As demonstrated by a very popular channel that you guys may have seen already, right? These can take quite a bit of force to them, and that's one of the great things about these companies. Not only is it super high strength, but it's also incredibly lightweight. This rifle specifically, I went and weighed, and it comes in at, I wrote it down here, 4 pounds, 12 ounces. Now, compare that to this guy from the Pro Line series, Gen 2s, which comes in at 5 pounds, 8 ounces, compared to one of the heaviest weight rifles we have is 6 pound, 10 ounces, right? That guy right there. So what is the difference there? The difference is maybe a pound, right? Even though someone picks this up, someone picks this up, someone picks that up, oh, these are so much heavier. Well, the reality is, based on the weights that I gave you, the difference is maybe half a cup of coffee that I have here in my hands. For not a whole lot more weight, you get as much, if not more, structural integrity and thus reliability. So that's what I have to say about the external polymer build, is it's very, very high strength. And it's very evident that they went into actually doing their best to reinforce the parts that need reinforcing, and then being able to build up still the parts that don't need reinforcement. Because this does feel very nice, despite the flexibility that I showed you just a couple seconds ago. I still am very impressed with the amount of flexibility that these guys have. And we have done that exact same thing, and then thrown a magazine in and tested the accuracy, and there is no deviation of that. That was one of the things that I wish that other channel was able to test out, which is, check to make sure the accuracy is still on point. Now, granted, we didn't throw any of these rifles, but we still did check the accuracy and made sure that BBs were still feeding out of that inner barrel. So I have rambled on long enough about just the external construction, because it has bothered me that people still look for metal receivers as beginner players. You don't need metal receivers. You just need a company that knows how to reinforce their polymers. Now, that being said, we're going to go tip to butt, and we're going to try to make this super brief of this model specifically, which is the LT15CB-G3, because all these are going to be slightly different external barrel lengths, rail systems, stock systems. So we're just going to be modeling it after this one specifically. Tip to butt. Now, at the very front here, we do have a SD, which is going to be a mock suppressor design with a small little disc on the very front there, which is going to be your mandatory orange tip that all of Airsoft distributors have to have on their guns in order to sell them. Now, I do want to add a little bit of extra time to this and say that I did have one person get a little heated, exaggerated about the molding that's on the side here, which is, you know, it does have some flashing to it, and it is very evident. It was one person out of everyone else that came and looked at this model specifically, so no one else seemed to have any gripes. It was just this one person that was, you know, very concerned with the fact that there was some flashing on there, which if it's important to one person, especially that important to one person, it's going to be important to 1,000 other people on the internet. So just want to point out that this model, and you know, maybe on some of the other rifles as well across the market, there is going to be flashing on the polymer. That's just how it is. So going backwards, we do have the polymer rail system that is going to be covering the metal barrel assembly, and that barrel is going to be about 8 inches. Your entire rail system is going to be about 11 inches in length, and so you have plenty of rail space between your top, left, right, and bottom in order to choose different types of vertical grips, angle grips, hand stops, grenade launchers, flashlights, laser system, PEC boxes. You know, you have plenty of options to throw onto here. Not only that, but you do have your flip up front sight, which you do need to push down. And in my experience with this one specifically, you do need to push that retention tab forward in order to make sure it locks into place. These are going to be a little bit more basic of iron sights, but they still work and they still do the job because they do have a heavy spring on there. Press the tab backwards, releasing that front iron sight, and it pops forward. But again, oh, there it worked. So maybe you just got to work it in. So we have that guy, which is a very basic front post. Going backwards, remaining on the top part of that rail system, we do have the identical rear iron sight, which by pushing down, that one clipped into place, and then pushing that retention tab backwards, flips back forward. And you do have your daytime and nighttime apertures, left and right adjustments, and then your front iron sight does have vertical adjustments as well. Push that down, push that down, hold in place. We have the polymer receiver system. You know, it does keep it nice and lightweight. Like I said, 4 pounds, 12 ounces. Nice and easy for any younger beginner players to handle. If we pull that charging handle back, which is going to be left hand, or using the left hand for right-handed shooters. So pull that back, and that does expose the rotary hop-up. Very nice that they did include that. The imitation bolt does not retain backwards with that, you know, imitation bolt release, which means you do need to pull that back and use your right hand or your shooting hand in order to make those adjustments to the hop-up unit. Slide that back forward, reverse your grip, and then take those test shots. Going backwards, we do have the standard on this model specifically, the right-handed shooter selector switch, which means it's going to be on the left-hand side of the receiver. And we have safe, semi, and full auto. Very easy to flip back and forth between those. Nothing for left-handed shooters. We have the magazine release. Works just the same as every other magazine release. A standard M4 receiver. Nothing special about that. We do have the trigger guard, which has a little bit more taste and flair to it compared to other rifle trigger guards. We have a Magpul clone of a grip here, which I personally really like the Magpul stuff. If you can't tell, I am a little bit of a Magpul fanboy. So I do appreciate that they did go with a more vertical grip with that beaver tail. For me, that's a very comfortable style of grip. The only thing that I don't like about the fact that they went with this grip is the quick release motor plate. And I'll talk about that in a couple seconds, or in a couple minutes actually. And then we do have a flat trigger, which is connected to that MOSFET board system internally. We're gonna talk about that in a couple minutes. the forward assist button, which does absolutely nothing. It is there for aesthetics and aesthetics alone. Going backwards, we do have a sling plate on the back of the receiver. Primarily those, you have more options on the left side of the receiver for left-handed or right-handed shooters. One little tab down on the right side of the receiver for any left-handed shooters, right-hand bias. And then we do have a 6-position polymer stock. I really like these stocks because they are going to be part of the Slimline series. There is a quick detach sling mount on the very back here, so you can put your sling systems back there if you really wanted to. I wonder if I have my quick detach on my sling. All right, so throwing my sling on, having that quick detach, and it clicks and holds right into place there. Very easy peasy. That's how I like to run my slings anyway. So quick detach does work and does function on the left and right side, just like that. Now they do also include some of the old school sling loops on the very bottom part of the sling and on the very top that sits below that buffer tube. That is going to be very, very old school sling slings, sling loops, sling lanyards, whatever you want to call them. I don't have a whole lot of experience with that old school stuff. I am very much in the new school, if you can't tell. We can pull that stock all the way off by having that, that tab get pulled all the way down, lifted all the way off of that buffer tube, pull that wire harness out, and then we see that it is connected to Dean's. Very beneficial, that Dean's, especially since we have that Slimline stock that does not allow a lot of battery compartment space. I also took that stock off because there's no other way to take the stock off via that butt plate on the stock. So you have to remove the stock completely in order to get whatever battery you want to fit inside of that buffer tube, stuff your wiring inside of there, and then reinstall that buffer tube. Now this is where there are going to be some complications because you have to get very specific batteries for that new battery compartment space, especially if you're not used to putting your batteries inside of that buffer tube. With that different battery space, you also have the limitation of the types of batteries you can utilize. You can't get anything that is too long, otherwise it's going to stick outside of that buffer tube and you won't be able to run that stock all the way flat. That was a very short battery that I installed in there, but I wasn't able to lock it all the way forward. So the shortest position is 1 position backwards. So there are going to be some complications with this Slimline. Now, there are different types of remedies for that. You can run multiple batteries on your person. That way when you run out on the field, pull that stock off, pull that battery out, throw in a fresh one, put it all back together. Dead battery goes in some other pouch, and then you're back up and running. Or you can get a Meteor stock, which has different crane compartments that you can fit some of those larger batteries inside of. This is part of the balance that you as the player need to decide. Do you want to get some of those smaller, thinner batteries in order to have a slim line profile of stock system, or do you want to just swap that out and get something that's going to be larger profile that gives you more storage space for a larger battery? So that's one of the things to take into consideration. Now that is all of the externals. Internally, we're going to talk about the Pro Line series of MOSFET system from Zion Arms. Now we do have the Pro Line series right here, and we can identify that it is a Pro Line because of the, trying to find space, there we go, because of the type of trigger that is installed in here, which is to say that it is a flat trigger compared to the more basic internals, which is a curved trigger. So, general rule of thumb with the Lance Tactical series is if it has a flat trigger, it has a MOSFET. On these guys, you need to actually identify on the side of the receiver, if it has the G3, it's part of the Gen 3s, which means it has a programmable MOSFET that can be programmed via trigger pulls, which I'll talk about in just a couple minutes as well. Always something with a couple minutes. Internally, like I said before, it does have a rotary style pop-up unit. This allows for a lot more precision or consistency as to the downward pressure of that rubber bucking onto the BB in order to give it, the most consistent backspin, which means it has the most consistent linear flight of path to your target, resulting in better performance. These also are going to be coming with a tight bore inner barrel at 6.03. Now they are going to be a brass inner barrel, so not super great, but it is better than some of the wide bore 6.05s or 6.08s or whatever else, right? So that is one of the balancing acts that is made with the Gen 3s. Of course, you can upgrade that tight bore inner barrel to a nickel coated brass, stainless steel, whatever you want, even a 6.00 if you really wanted to go with super tight bore. My suggestion is stick with the Lancer Tactical rotary style of hop-up unit. With the same brand of hop-up unit to gearbox, you are going to get better airflow consistency, resulting in better performance overall. Yes, a lot of people are going to suggest aftermarket hop-up units, but overall, you're going to get better performance and consistency of performance if you stick brand to brand. My professional suggestion. Now, speaking of batteries specifically, we have seen gameplay or other videos of people utilizing super high C discharge rating batteries, such as the 45C batteries that are 11.1 volts. While they have been tested and they've documented that these rifle systems can work and can handle those high discharge batteries, I wouldn't recommend utilizing 45C batteries. That's just crazy dangerous, right? Even battery systems that are a 30C discharge rate can and have been proven to be fatal to MOSFET systems as well. So with these guys, these Zion Arms MOSFET systems, I would personally say 25C is the cutoff limit for the type of battery to utilize. Obviously, an 11.1 is going to give you the best overall trigger response, rate of fire, performance compared to a 7.4. But I'm still going to prove that you can still utilize a 7.4, because what's the goal? To have fun. Can you use an 11.1 to use binary or fast burst in order to plug stupid fast rounds into someone? Yes. Should you? Obviously not. Obviously not. But people are still going to do it. So, for people that are going to say you have to use an 11.1, that's just no. Now I am going to cheat, and I am using a Titan Power 7.4 volt, but as far as a C rating, this guy should be about a 15-16 C. And there was the beep. I can still pull the trigger at a relatively fast rate. Obviously, going from a 7.4 to an 11.1 is going to yield you better results. But again, you don't necessarily need 11.1s. So if you already have 7.4 lipos, they can work and you can use them. And you can still get good performance. Now going back to the 45C batteries, if you want to use them for short bursts of fire in order to test your high speed feed magazines, you can go right ahead. I would not suggest utilizing 45C batteries for long extended periods of gameplay. Just my experience, we have seen other MOSFET systems blow up and be fatal with those 30C batteries, and definitely higher, obviously. Still sticking with the internals, these guys are coming with an outdoor spring already installed. Inside the box, they are coming with an indoor spring. At least that's what's advertised. Now, it was our batch that we were able to test these and identify that they actually came with both outdoor springs. And was not only our batch, but a lot of other people that we have seen across other social media platforms, as well as word of mouth, that these were coming with both outdoor springs. So we were able to contact Lancer Tactical. They did send us the correct springs, and we do have them installed, and we did test them out. Now the outdoor springs are chronoing anywhere from 380 up to 440 feet per second. The indoor springs that we did install were maxing out at about 360 feet per second. Now, because these springs are going to be more of a linear style of spring, they are going to wear down to right at the limit of that indoor and outdoor velocity, which means that 420 FPS spring is going to settle down to about 400. Now you will need to put some rounds into it to make sure that that spring does compress and wear in, but that's kind of the trade-off, right? Go 420, wear it down to 400 versus having 400 and then getting it worn down to 380. Same thing with that indoor spring. 360 FPS, getting worn down to 350, 340 feet per second, whatever the indoor velocity is, and then instead of 350, down to 330 or 320. That's the thinking on that side of the house. So they did drop the ball on that, at least providing both outdoor springs, but very good that they were able to catch it. Unfortunately, it was probably a rush of a lot of people contacting Lancer Tactical about the Gen 3 springs, so they were probably bugged down a little bit about that, but very thankful that they were able to send those out to us. The other thing is the motor plate, because that does have to do with some of the internals. Now, granted that these are going to be the Magpul style, there is this little button down here, which means it is going to be a latch style. So pull that down and it springs open. Now that does give you very quick and immediate access to that motor. My argument as a technician is that you don't need immediate access to your motor. There's absolutely nothing that you need inside of here as a beginner player in order to fuss and muss around with, right? So I would rather have the 2 screws on the bottom of the motor plate that you have to take the screwdriver to and spend time disassembling, compared to pulling this down and it flops open. Because as soon as that happens and you try to push it back into place, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get this. I'm going to pop this open. All right, 11.1. Beep, beep. It recognized the battery, but it doesn't sound good, does it? Yeah. So please, 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 if you do have one of these Lancer Tactical rifles, or even any of these styles of motors or motor grips, don't just pop open the latch because it opens, right? If you don't need to get inside there, don't go inside there. Unfortunately, I wish they didn't provide those, but they did. So you guys know, as the player base, don't mess around with your motor. Because once you start messing around with the motor, that's going to change the amount of length that that motor engages the rest of the gear set, which means it's going to be either too far in, too far out, and it's not meshing properly, and that's when things start to go from bad to worse pretty quickly. So I'm going to take the time to reset this guy, and then we'll be all good. This is our model anyway. This is the one that we have dedicated to our staffing so that we can get gameplay, do some testing, just our general reaction to it. So this guy, we intentionally did that too, as a test, to show you guys. And now you know what not to do. The Zion Arms programmable MOSFET system is probably, first of all, one of the cheapest programmable MOSFETs that I have ever seen thus far. So very cool that they were able to implement that, especially for a MOSFET system that is programmable via trigger pulls and has active braking. Very cool that they were able to provide that. Lighting looks a little bit better if I do it here. So how does that programmability work? Well, I only need a 7.4 to show you. So I'm going to plug this guy in. Plug it in, gives me the beep beep that it recognizes that battery. Put your selector into full auto and go from semi to auto, semi to auto. Gives you that beep. And then you can use trigger pulls to go through all of the cycles. Now, once you hit the button once to go through that programming option, after you hit that button, it's going to give you the different tones or number of beeps, resulting in a different type of program, essentially, which means you have semi all the way up to a 6-round burst. You also have binary option, which is by no means a newer system for you guys, because a lot of people have shown this off to you. But in order to select that binary, it takes no more than a couple of seconds, right? Plug your battery in, make that switch, trigger through the different options, go into binary, and now on the trigger pull and release, you have a shot. Or not. Let me try that again. There we go. Oh, it actually asked me to pull on. So even with a 7.4, I can spam that trigger pretty well with just binary. I totally forgot I need to be in full auto and not semi. So I go to the Titan Power 7.4. It should remember the setting, and it does. And you will notice if I go ultra fast, it has a very hard time reacting to those trigger pulls. Part of that is due to the fact that as a MOSFET system, it's recognizing when that trigger is being pulled and when it's being released, which means it's only going to fire once it recognizes the entire gear system is done with a cycle. Versus rifle systems like this that don't have active braking and definitely doesn't have a MOSFET. If people try to put super high speed gears inside of there and try to go super fast, faster than the rate of speed that the gear ratio is set for, what they can do is they can create a gearbox lock, or they can just fry their motor system, their wiring system, or even their battery, right? They're pushing the limits as far as what it's supposed to do, which is why it is so important for anyone that wants to utilize MOSFET systems to get a high rate of fire, whether it be on semi or full auto. Get a MOSFET system that has active braking, and then you're going to be that much better, right? So people that are on semi and trying to spam that trigger, lock that gearbox up and creates bad things for the internals, and then they need to pay me to fix it. But the fact that this has that active braking system and can recognize when that gear set is complete, when the cycle of fire is done, it is then ready for another trigger pull or trigger release to send another one. So as long as I'm slow with my shots, it's going to keep up. Now, let's push the limit with an 11.1. And let's go over to the chrono and see just how fast we can get this to turn over. So we're gonna check that rate of fire camera. I'm out. Oh no, I have to. I got up to 13, but 12 consistently. I talked about the battery space, the motor plate. Now let's talk about the accuracy. I was using 0.28 gram BBs inside of this thing, inside of this rifle specifically. This is the one that we took down and we did the accuracy testing because we did get a little bit more barrel length. So this is going to be more of a carbine compared to a CQB or even the long length of rail system. So this was kind of in between barrel length for us to do our accuracy testing. Now, I did have a different targeting system compared to previously, so please don't let that bother you. So this is up. So Did 5 shots at 25 feet, and those hit all within, I would say, 1.5 inch size grouping. Very accurate, very consistent at 25 feet. Going out to 50 feet, we have our grouping size almost triple, up to 5 inches, 6 inches, 5 inches, 4 inches, somewhere in there. Definitely not 6. 6 is too long. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inside of there, using just iron sights, so overall still very consistent. Out at 100 feet, we did have one flyaway. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 make its way all the way up in the right-hand corner. This was the target that we were utilizing, so it was easier to identify where those shots went, but also because I ran out of the other targets. Compared to, you know, one of my used ones, you know, it's not that much wider, right? So we can still see that all of those all of those shots would still have been on target. So overall, very good accuracy and very good consistency with a 0.28 gram BBs. What are some of my final notes of the Lancer tactical rifle system? Well, first of all, they do model their rifles after some real firearm companies, such as that Magpul grip like I mentioned before. They also, from some of their Gen 2 rifles, and maybe even some of their Gen 3s, feature that M-LOK rail system, which is very, very, very similar, I'm gonna lay this here, to a firearm company that is extremely local to my location, and someone that I have made a couple videos about already. You may have heard of them, but Midwest Industries. And so this is the Midwest Industries rail system, the Slimline. I don't have the exact same model that this guy was modeled after, but here we have that Slimline. Try to get the light on there. Very similar to what's going on there with the tan one. Showing one more is this guy, the G4M rail system. Very similar in design to this guy. Now, am I saying that this is a ripoff to Midwest Industries? No. Could it have been coincidental? Yes. Are they extremely similar? Oh yeah. But that is a neutral statement. I am saying nothing more of it, just an observation. Other than that, my thoughts of the Lancer Tactical Gen 3 systems are those of very, very positive reactions. Went down and did some test shooting, got some of my immediate thoughts and feedback, and my thought is, at the price point that these are being presented, there are a lot of awesome features included inside of this. Now, compared to this exact same model in the Gen 2 system without that programmable MOSFET, it's maybe a $40 difference. Now, that programmable MOSFET system, at least a similar model, is more than $40. So very cool that we did get that active braking and programmable MOSFET system, and from what we have seen thus far, very awesome performance. Granted that they haven't been on the market very long, but we did pick one up, and we will try to do our best to get some long-term performance from this guy, so we can tell you exactly what we have experienced further on down the road and what can be expected from beginner players even a year down the road from now. So that's what we have. Overall, I really like these. I can't wait to go and get some gameplay of it, see exactly what the internals look like, maybe do something with that. But overall, I really, really like them. We're going to do our best to continue to bring in the Gen 3 rifle systems. Very difficult for us to get those available in deep quantities. That's why you don't see them on the website. because I generally can only get a couple at a time. And so by the time I get around to like, hey, let's take a picture of these because it's picture day, then it's like, we're out of stock. And it's like, shoot. Anyway, these have been very, very successful. We're huge fans of them, of the Gen 2s and the Gen 3s. We're going to be continuing to bring in the lineup. If we can get deeper quantity, we will be putting those onto the website, but it's all dependent on getting deeper stock. That's what I have for you guys. Go pick some of these up if you want. Anyway, if you guys have any further questions down below, put them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer each and every single one of those, but we're all done here. So you guys take care, stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.